My name is Sophia, and I am 28 years old. 3 weeks ago, I discovered my parents had given my entire $50,000 wedding fund to my younger sister Madison without telling me. Their exact words were, "She deserves it more than you do." What they did not know was that my fiancé, Marcus, had been recording every family conversation for months, building a case that would expose decades of favoritism and financial manipulation. When he gave them 72 hours to return every penny, none of us knew it would destroy our family forever. Before we dive into this wild ride of family betrayal and sweet justice, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and smash that like button if you are ready for some serious family drama revenge. Do not forget to subscribe because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory, and trust me, you will want to see how karma came for everyone involved. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It all started on what should have been the happiest day of my wedding planning journey. Marcus and I had been engaged for 8 months, and we had finally found the perfect venue for our October wedding. The Riverside Manor was everything I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. Ivy-covered walls, crystal chandeliers, and gardens that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The only problem was the deposit, $15,000 due within 48 hours to secure our date. I had been contributing to my wedding fund since I was 16 years old. Every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation, my parents had promised that money would go toward my special day. They had opened a separate savings account specifically for this purpose, and over the years, it had grown to $50,000. I trusted them completely. They were my parents, after all, and this was supposed to be their gift to their eldest daughter. When I called my mother that Tuesday morning to discuss transferring the deposit money, her voice sounded strange, distant. She kept clearing her throat and asking me to repeat myself, which was completely unlike her usual confident demeanor. "Mom, we need to move $15,000 from the wedding account to our checking account by Thursday," I explained, pacing around our apartment kitchen while Marcus made coffee. "The venue coordinator needs the deposit to hold our October date, and there are 3 other couples interested in the same weekend." The silence that followed lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her words hit me like a physical blow. "Sweetie, we need to talk about the wedding fund. Your father and I have made a decision, and we think it is for the best. Madison needed the money more than you do right now, so we gave it to her for her house down payment. She is starting a family, and homeownership is more practical than one day of celebration." I actually laughed. It was such an absurd statement that my brain could not process it as reality. "What do you mean you gave it to her?" "That money has been earmarked for my wedding for 12 years. Madison just got engaged 6 months ago. She has not even set a wedding date. Madison and Kevin found the perfect starter home in Maple Grove. The sellers accepted their offer, but they needed the down payment immediately or they would lose it to another buyer. 20% down was exactly $50,000. We could not let her miss this opportunity." The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the kitchen tiles. Marcus immediately turned around, concern flooding his face as he took in my expression. I must have looked like I had seen a ghost because he dropped everything and rushed to my side. "You gave away my wedding fund," I repeated slowly, trying to make sense of the words. "Without asking me. Without even telling me. You just decided that my sister deserved it more than I do. Sophia, honey, you and Marcus are both successful professionals. You have good jobs, stable income, and you can afford to pay for your own wedding. Madison and Kevin are just starting out. She is 24 and working part-time while finishing her master's degree. He is still an apprentice electrician. They needed help in a way that you simply do not." The favoritism had always been there, lurking beneath the surface of every family interaction, but it had never been this blatant. Madison was the baby, the surprise child who came along when I was 4 years old. She was bubbly and charming where I was serious and studious. She made friends easily while I preferred books. She was everything my parents seemed to want in a daughter, and I was the responsible one who never caused trouble, but never quite measured up either. But this was different. This was not about personality preferences or different parenting styles for different children. This was about stealing 12 years of my financial contributions and giving them to someone else without my consent. Mom, I contributed to that account too. Every summer job, every birthday check from grandparents, every Christmas bonus from part-time work during college. That was not just your money to give away. Some of that money was literally mine. We kept track of your contributions, sweetheart. It was about $8,000 over the years. We can write you a check for that amount, but the rest was our gift to contribute toward your wedding. And we have decided to redirect that gift to Madison instead. $8,000. They had reduced 12 years of my dreams and sacrifices to $8,000, as if the emotional investment meant nothing. As if the hours I had spent planning and saving and dreaming were worthless compared to Madison's sudden need for a house. Marcus had been listening to my side of the conversation, his expression growing darker with each word. He held out his hand for the phone, but I shook my head. I needed to handle this myself, even though I felt like I was drowning. When did you make this decision? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Last month. Madison and Kevin put in their offer 3 weeks ago, and it was accepted 2 weeks ago. The closing is next Friday. We transferred the money last Monday to make sure everything would go smoothly. Last Monday. They had been sitting on this information for over a week, letting me continue planning and budgeting for a wedding they knew I could no longer afford. They had watched me stress about vendor deposits and guest counts while knowing they had already sabotaged the entire event. And you did not think I deserved to know about this decision that directly affects my life. We knew you would be upset, and we wanted to wait until everything was finalized with Madison's house before having this conversation. We thought it would be easier if it was already done. Easier for whom, I wondered. Certainly not for me, standing in my kitchen surrounded by broken ceramic and broken dreams, trying to figure out how to tell the man I loved that our wedding was indefinitely postponed because my parents had decided my sister's happiness was more important than mine. That was when Marcus took the phone from my hand, and everything changed. Mrs. Chin, this is Marcus, he said in his lawyer voice, the tone he used during depositions when he was about to destroy someone's case. I need you to understand something very clearly. You and your husband have just committed theft by conversion and possibly fraud, depending on how we want to pursue this legally. I could hear my mother's sharp intake of breath through the phone. Marcus had always been polite and deferential during family gatherings, the perfect future son-in-law who complimented her cooking and helped clear dishes without being asked. She had never heard this side of him before. Marcus, I think there has been a misunderstanding. This was our money to give to whichever daughter we chose. We are not obligated to fund Sophia's wedding. Actually, Mrs. Chin, that is where you are wrong. When you establish a dedicated account for a specific purpose and allow someone to contribute their own funds to that account with the understanding that those funds will be used for the stated purpose, you create what is called a constructive trust. When you then use those funds for a different purpose without the contributor's consent, that constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. Marcus was pacing now, his free hand gesturing as if he were addressing a jury. This was what he did for a living, corporate litigation, and watching him shift into attack mode was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Furthermore, he continued, Sophia has documentation of her contributions over the years, including bank statements, deposit slips, and even some of your own emails acknowledging her deposits and thanking her for her contributions to her special day fund. This creates a paper trail that establishes her ownership interest in those funds. You cannot be serious, my mother said, her voice rising. You are going to sue your future in-laws over wedding money? What kind of person are you? The kind of person who does not stand by while the woman I love gets robbed by her own family, Marcus replied without missing a beat. And frankly, Mrs. Chin, I am more concerned about what kind of people you and Mr. Chin are. What kind of parents steal their daughter's wedding fund and then act like she is being unreasonable for being upset about it? That was when Marcus revealed something that made my blood run cold. I should also mention that I have been recording our family conversations for the past several months. You see, Sophia has been sharing some concerning stories about the way you treat her compared to Madison, and as someone who grew up in a family where financial abuse was used as a control mechanism, I recognized the patterns immediately. My mother went completely silent. I stared at Marcus in shock, realizing that while I had been trying to maintain family harmony and make excuses for my parents' behavior, he had been building a case. "What conversations?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh, let me think. There was Thanksgiving, when you told Sophia that Madison would probably be a better mother because she was more naturally nurturing. There was Christmas, when you gave Madison a $3,000 piece of jewelry and gave Sophia a gift card to Target. There was Easter, when you spent 30 minutes praising Madison's new boyfriend while barely acknowledging Sophia's promotion to senior analyst. Should I continue? You recorded private family conversations without our consent. I recorded conversations that took place in my presence, which is legal in this state as long as one party consents to the recording. That one party was me. And, trust me, Mrs. Chin, those recordings paint a very clear picture of a pattern of favoritism and emotional manipulation that has been going on for years." Marcus looked at me then, his eyes softening for just a moment. "I was planning to use them to help Sophia understand that the way you treat her is not normal or acceptable. I never imagined you would actually steal from her. We did not steal anything. You took $50,000 that was designated for a specific purpose and gave it to someone else without the permission of the person who had been contributing to and relying on those funds. In what universe is that not theft?" Marcus walked over to our kitchen table and picked up a yellow legal pad, flipping to a page covered in his neat handwriting. I realized he had been taking notes throughout the entire conversation. "Here is what is going to happen," he said, his voice deadly calm. "You and Mr. Chin have 72 hours to return every penny of Sophia's wedding fund to the account where it belongs. If you fail to do so, I will be filing a lawsuit for conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I will also be forwarding copies of my recordings to Madison and Kevin, so they can understand exactly how their dream house was funded." "You cannot do that." "Watch me. You see, Mrs. Chin, I specialize in cases where people think they can get away with taking what does not belong to them because they have family relationships or positions of trust that they believe will protect them. You would be amazed how often people like you end up very surprised by how quickly their world falls apart when someone finally holds them accountable. Madison and Kevin do not deserve to be dragged into this. Madison and Kevin are adults who deserve to know the truth about where their down payment came from. Do you really think Madison would want her dream house if she knew it was built on her sister's stolen dreams? And if she would, well, that tells us everything we need to know about the kind of person you raised her to be." My mother was crying now, but Marcus showed no signs of backing down. 72 hours, Mrs. Chen. Business days only, so you have until 5 p.m. on Friday. If the money is not returned in full, with interest to compensate for the opportunity cost of Sophia's delayed wedding planning, then you will be hearing from my colleagues at the firm. And trust me, they are much less nice than I am. What about Madison's house? The closing is next Friday. That sounds like a problem you should have considered before you decided to steal someone else's money to solve it. Sophia is not responsible for fixing Madison's financial problems, especially not at the cost of her own future happiness. Marcus ended the call and immediately pulled me into his arms. I was shaking, though I could not tell if it was from anger, shock, or relief that someone was finally fighting for me. "Why did not you tell me you were recording them?" I whispered against his chest. "Because I knew you would ask me to stop, and I knew we were going to need evidence eventually. Your parents have been financially and emotionally manipulating you for years, Sophia. Someone needed to document it. What if they do not give the money back?" Marcus pulled back and looked me in the eyes, his expression fierce and determined. "Then we destroy them." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of frantic phone calls and family chaos. My father called first, his voice shaking with rage as he demanded to know how dare we threaten his family with legal action over what he called a simple misunderstanding about gift allocation. Marcus calmly informed him that theft was not a misunderstanding and that the clock was now ticking. Then Madison called, sobbing hysterically about how her dream house was falling apart and how could I be so selfish and cruel. That conversation lasted exactly 90 seconds before I hung up on her, my patience for family manipulation finally reaching its breaking point. But the call that changed everything came from my grandmother. "Sophia, honey, your mother just left here in tears, babbling about lawsuits and recordings and stolen money," Grandma Rose said, her voice sharp with concern. "What in the hell is going on over there?" I loved my grandmother fiercely. She was my father's mother, a tough-as-nails woman who had raised 6 children during the Depression and still managed to be the most generous, loving person I knew. She had always been my safe harbor when family dynamics got too overwhelming, and she was the only person whose opinion my father actually respected. "They took my wedding fund and gave it to Madison," I said simply, too emotionally exhausted to sugarcoat anything. $50,000, Grandma. Gone. Without asking, without telling me, without even thinking about how it would affect my life. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. "They did what?" "Madison needed a down payment for a house. Mom and Dad decided she deserved it more than I did because I have a good job and can supposedly afford my own wedding. They gave away 12 years of savings and then acted like I was being unreasonable for being upset about it." 12 years. You have been saving for your wedding since you were 16 years old. Every birthday check, every summer job, every Christmas gift. All gone to fund Madison's new life while mine gets put on indefinite hold. What happened next was something I had never heard before in my entire life. My 78-year-old grandmother started cursing like a sailor, using words I did not even know she knew. When she finally ran out of creative profanity, she moved on to planning. "Pack a bag, sweetheart. You and that fiancé of yours are coming to stay with me until this mess gets sorted out. I need to make some phone calls, and your parents need to understand that they have messed with the wrong family member this time. Grandma, you do not have to get involved in this." "Like hell I do not. That wedding fund was not just your parents' money, Sophia. I contributed to it too. Your grandfather and I put $5,000 into that account when you turned 18, specifically for your wedding day. If they gave away my money without my permission, they just messed with the wrong old lady." That evening, Marcus and I found ourselves sitting in Grandma Rose's cozy living room, surrounded by photo albums and the smell of homemade soup, while she made a series of phone calls that would have made a mob boss proud. It turned out that several family members had contributed to my wedding fund over the years, and none of them had been consulted about the decision to redirect their gifts to Madison. "Your Uncle Jim put in $1,000 when you graduated college," she said, hanging up from her third call. "Your Aunt Sarah contributed $1,500 when you got your first real job. Your cousin Michelle sent $500 when you got engaged. None of them knew their money was being given to Madison instead." "How much total?" Marcus asked, taking notes again. "At least $12,000 from family members alone, not counting what you and your parents contributed. And every single one of them is furious about this betrayal of trust." Uncle Jim called back 20 minutes later, his voice booming through Grandma's speakerphone. "Sophia, honey, I just got off the phone with your father, and let me tell you, that man has completely lost his mind if he thinks he can steal family money and then act like the victim when he gets called out for it." "What did he say?" I asked. "He said you were being dramatic and that Marcus was putting ideas in your head about taking legal action. He actually had the audacity to tell me that Madison needed the money more than you did, as if that gives him the right to redistribute gifts that were specifically intended for your wedding." Marcus leaned forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Jim, would you be willing to provide documentation of your contribution? Bank records, canceled checks, anything that shows the money was specifically designated for Sophia's wedding. I have got every receipt, son. And I will testify in court if necessary. What your parents did is theft, plain and simple, and I will not stand for it." By the end of the evening, Marcus had compiled a list of 8 family members who had contributed to my wedding fund over the years, with a total of nearly $15,000 in documented gifts. Each one of them was prepared to demand restitution if my parents did not return the money voluntarily. "This is bigger than just you and your parents now," Marcus explained as we prepared for bed in Grandma's guest room. "They have essentially stolen from multiple family members, and word is spreading. Your father's reputation in the family is about to take a serious hit." "I never wanted it to become a family war," I said, feeling guilty about the chaos that was unfolding. "You did not start this war, Sophia. Your parents declared war on you when they decided to steal your money and then gaslight you into thinking you were wrong for being upset about it. We are just making sure they understand the consequences of their actions." The next morning brought even more developments. Madison called again, this time angry instead of tearful. "Sophia, you need to call off your attack dog," she said without preamble. "Kevin is furious about this whole situation, and he is saying maybe we should not accept money that is causing this much family drama." "Maybe you should not," I replied calmly. "That money was never meant for you, Madison. It was my wedding fund, built up over 12 years of saving and family contributions. If Kevin has a problem with accepting stolen money, maybe you should listen to him. It was not stolen." Mom and Dad had every right to change their minds about how to spend their money. Their money? "Madison, did you know that Grandma Rose contributed $5,000 to that fund specifically for my wedding? Or that Uncle Jim put in $1,000 when I graduated college? Or that half the family has been contributing to this fund for years, all with the understanding that it was for my special day?" The silence that followed told me that she had not known. My parents had not just betrayed me, they had lied to Madison about the source of her down payment. "That cannot be true," she whispered. "Ask them," I said simply. "Ask Mom and Dad to show you the account statements going back 12 years. Look at all the deposits and where they came from. Then ask yourself if you really want to build your new life on a foundation of lies and stolen dreams." Madison hung up without another word. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Kevin, Madison's fiancé, and his voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Sophia, I need to know the truth about this money. Madison is telling me one story, your parents are telling me another, and your grandmother just called to give me a third version. What the hell is really going on?" I told him everything. The 12 years of saving, the family contributions, the discovery of the theft, the complete lack of communication or consent. When I finished, Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus Christ," he finally said. "Madison had no idea about any of the family contributions. Your parents told her it was money they had been saving for years to help whichever daughter needed it first. They made it sound like some kind of general family emergency fund. And now? Now I understand why my gut has been telling me something was wrong about this whole situation. Madison deserves to know the truth, even if it means we lose the house." That afternoon, the 72-hour deadline suddenly became irrelevant. Kevin had convinced Madison to research the history of the wedding fund, and what she found in those old bank statements changed everything. Madison called me at 6 in the evening, her voice completely different from any conversation we had ever had before. Gone was the entitled younger sister who always expected the family to revolve around her needs. In her place was someone who sounded genuinely horrified by what she had discovered. "Sophia, I found the bank statements," she said without any greeting. "All of them. Going back to when you were 16. I saw every deposit, every birthday contribution, every summer job payment. I saw Grandma Rose's $5,000 deposit with the memo line that said, 'For Sophia's special day.' I saw Uncle Jim's graduation gift. I saw everything." I waited, not sure what to say. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad that it had taken this long for my sister to see the truth. "They lied to me, Sophia. They told me this was money they had been setting aside as a general fund to help whichever daughter needed it first. They never told me it was specifically your wedding fund, and they definitely never told me that you had been contributing to it yourself for over a decade. What are you going to do?" I asked quietly. Kevin and I are pulling out of the house purchase. We called the sellers this afternoon and forfeited our earnest money. We cannot build our life together on something that was stolen from my sister, no matter how much we loved that house. I started crying then, not from sadness, but from relief. My sister was not the person I had thought she was. The favoritism and manipulation from our parents had affected her too, just in different ways. Let me finish, she interrupted. I also called Mom and Dad and told them that if they do not return every penny of your money immediately, I will be standing right beside you in court. What they did was not just theft from you. It was fraud against me. They used lies and deception to make me complicit in hurting my own sister. What did they say? Dad hung up on me. Mom cried and said I was being ungrateful after everything they had done for me. But here is the thing, Sophia, I looked at everything they have done for me over the years, and I realized that most of it came at your expense. The extra money for college when I changed majors 3 times? That probably came from funds that should have gone to you. The car they bought me for my 21st birthday? You never got a car for your 21st birthday. The spring break trips they paid for? You worked every spring break to save money for your future. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Madison and me finally having the honest discussion about family dynamics that we should have had years ago. She told me about the pressure she felt to be the perfect, grateful daughter who never questioned anything. I told her about the loneliness of always being the responsible one who never seemed to measure up no matter what I achieved. By the end of the call, we had made a plan. Madison would return to our parents' house the next morning to collect any remaining documents related to the wedding fund. More importantly, she would be wearing a wire. Marcus had provided her with a recording device that looked like a normal pen, and she was going to get our parents to admit, on record, exactly what they had done and why they thought they had the right to do it. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked her. Once we have their confession on tape, there is no going back. This is going to destroy our relationship with them permanently. Sophia, our relationship with them was already destroyed the moment they decided to steal from you and lie to me. I am just making sure we have proof of what kind of people they really are. The next morning, Marcus and I sat in his car outside our childhood home while Madison went inside for what she told our parents would be a conversation about working things out as a family. Through the recording equipment, we could hear everything that happened in that house. Madison, sweetheart, we are so glad you came to your senses, my mother said. Sophia has always been dramatic, and that boyfriend of hers is just making everything worse by filling her head with legal nonsense. I want to understand why you made the decision to give her money to me, Madison said carefully. Walk me through your thinking. Well, honey, you and Kevin needed help in a way that Sophia simply does not. She has a good job, a successful fiancé, and the ability to pay for her own wedding. You are just starting out in life, and homeownership is so much more important than one day of celebration. But Mom, that money was not just your money to give away. Sophia contributed to it, and so did other family members. Do not you think they should have had a say in how it was used? Sophia contributed maybe $8,000 over the years, my father interjected. The rest was our money, our gift, and we can redirect our gifts however we see fit. If family members have a problem with that, they can take it up with us directly. What about the fact that this was specifically designated as Sophia's wedding fund for 12 years? Does not that create some kind of obligation to use it for that purpose? Madison, you are our daughter too, my mother said, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I knew so well. We love both of our girls equally, but sometimes love means making hard decisions about who needs help most. Sophia has always been self-sufficient. You have always needed more guidance and support. More guidance and support, Madison repeated slowly. Is that what you call it when you give me everything I ask for while making Sophia work for everything she gets? That is not fair, Madison. We have always done our best to treat you girls equally. Equally? Mom, I have been going through old financial records, and I can see that you spent twice as much on my college education as you did on Sophia's, even though she had better grades and got more scholarships. You bought me a car for my birthday and gave her a gift card to Target. You paid for my study abroad trip and told her she needed to get a job if she wanted to travel. How is any of that equal? The silence that followed was deafening. When my father finally spoke, his voice was cold and angry. Madison, I do not know what your sister has been telling you, but you're being manipulated. Sophia has always been jealous of the attention you received, and now she is using this wedding fund issue to turn you against your own parents. Actually, Dad, Sophia has never said a word against either of you until this week. Even when I called her crying about losing the house, she did not gloat or say I told you so. She just told me to ask you for the truth about where the money came from. And you know what? She was right to tell me that, because you have been lying to me about this from the beginning. We did not lie to anyone. You told me this was emergency family money that could go to whichever daughter needed it first. That was a lie. You told me Sophia was being dramatic and unreasonable for wanting her wedding fund back. That was a lie. You told me that most of the money came from you and that her contributions were minimal. That was also a lie. Madison, you need to calm down and think about what you are saying. I need to calm down? Dad, you stole $50,000 from my sister and then convinced me to be an accessory to that theft by accepting money that did not belong to me. And now you are sitting here trying to gaslight me into believing that somehow this is all Sophia's fault for being upset about it. That was when everything fell apart completely. My father's voice exploded through the recording device with a rage I had never heard before. Fine. You want the truth? Here is the truth, Madison. Your sister has always been a selfish, ungrateful brat who thinks the world owes her something just because she gets good grades and follows all the rules. She has never appreciated anything we have done for her, and she sure as hell does not deserve $50,000 for one day of playing princess. Marcus and I looked at each other in shock. Even though we had suspected this was how my parents really felt, hearing it spoken out loud was devastating. She thinks she is so much better than everyone else with her fancy job and her lawyer boyfriend, my father continued, his voice dripping with resentment. Well, let me tell you something about your precious sister. She is cold, calculating, and completely incapable of understanding what family loyalty means. Do you know that she has not called us just to chat in over 3 years? Every conversation is about what she needs or what she wants from us. Maybe she stopped calling because you never showed any interest in her life, Madison shot back. When was the last time you asked her about her job, her friends, her relationship with Marcus? When was the last time you celebrated one of her achievements without immediately finding a way to diminish it or change the subject to me? We have always been proud of Sophia's accomplishments. Bullshit, Dad. You have always been threatened by Sophia's accomplishments because they make you look bad as a parent. She succeeded in spite of how you treated her, not because of it, and that terrifies you. How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you steal from your own daughter and then act like she is the problem for being upset about it? How dare you lie to me about where that money came from and make me complicit in hurting my sister? Madison, honey, please do not let Sophia turn you against us, my mother said, her voice breaking with tears. We have always loved both of our daughters equally. We were just trying to help you get started in life. By destroying Sophia's life? Mom, do you have any idea what this has done to her? She called off her wedding venue because she cannot afford the deposit. She has been crying herself to sleep every night for 2 weeks because the people she trusted most in the world betrayed her in the cruelest way possible. And you think that is an acceptable sacrifice to make so I can have a house? She can find a cheaper venue. She should not have to. That money was hers, Mom. 12 years of saving, 12 years of dreaming, 12 years of trusting you to keep her money safe, and you gave it away without even telling her. How can you not see how wrong that is? The argument continued for another 20 minutes, with my parents alternating between fury and self-pity, while Madison systematically dismantled every excuse they tried to offer. She was magnificent, standing up for me in a way that no one in our family ever had before. But the moment that changed everything came when my father finally revealed the real reason behind their decision. You want to know the truth, Madison? Fine. Here is the truth. Sophia does not deserve a fairy tale wedding because she has never been the kind of daughter who deserved fairy tale treatment. You have always been loving, affectionate, grateful for everything we have done for you. Sophia has always been distant, judgmental, and cold. She makes us feel like failures as parents just by existing. So you decided to punish her financially? We decided to invest our money in the daughter who actually loves us instead of the daughter who treats us like obligation she has to fulfill. The recording device captured my mother's gasp of horror as she realized what my father had just admitted. Madison's voice, when she spoke again, was deadly quiet. Dad, what you just described is not parenting. It is emotional abuse. You have been punishing Sophia her entire life for not being the daughter you wanted her to be, instead of loving the daughter you actually have. That is ridiculous. Is it? Let me ask you something. When Sophia graduated summa cum laude from college, what did you say to her? Silence. I will tell you what you said, because I was there. You said, "That is nice, honey," and then spent the rest of dinner talking about my spring break plans. When she got promoted to senior analyst last year, what did you say? More silence. You said, "Good for you," and immediately changed the subject to ask if I needed money for my new apartment. When she got engaged to Marcus, what did you do? We were happy for her. You were polite to Marcus for exactly one dinner, and then you spent the next 6 months making comments about how young they were to be getting married, and how expensive weddings were, and how maybe they should just elope instead. You have been sabotaging her happiness for years, and I was too selfish and too comfortable being the favorite to see it. Madison, you are being manipulated. No, Dad. You manipulated me. You turned me into a weapon against my own sister by making me believe that I deserved special treatment because I was more loving, more grateful, more worthy of your affection. You taught me to see Sophia's independence as coldness and her success as something that diminished my own worth. When Madison walked out of that house 20 minutes later, she was carrying a box of documents and a recording that would destroy our parents' reputation in the family permanently. But more than that, she was carrying the weight of finally understanding how toxic our family dynamics had always been. Marcus and I met her at a coffee shop near the house, and the three of us listened to the recording together. By the end, Madison was crying, not just from anger, but from grief for the sister relationship we could have had if our parents had not spent years pitting us against each other. "I am so sorry, Sophia," she whispered. "I am sorry for accepting special treatment without questioning where it came from. I am sorry for not standing up for you when they criticized you. I am sorry for being so blind to how they were treating you. You were a kid, Madison. You were just responding to the environment they created. I am not a kid now. And I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years when I should have been your ally instead of their favorite." That evening, Marcus sent copies of the recording to every family member who had contributed to my wedding fund, along with a formal demand letter for the return of all money within 24 hours. By midnight, my parents' phones were ringing constantly with calls from furious relatives who finally understood the full scope of their betrayal. The war was no longer just between my parents and me. It was between my parents and the entire extended family, and they were losing badly. The money was returned in full by noon the next day. My father called Marcus directly, his voice defeated and hollow as he provided the account information for the wire transfer. There were no more excuses, no more justifications, no more attempts to play the victim. The recording had made it impossible for him to maintain any pretense that he had acted in good faith. "The money will be in Sophia's account within 2 hours," he said simply. "I hope she is satisfied with destroying our family over a few dollars." Marcus did not even dignify that with a response. He simply confirmed the transfer details and hung up. But the money was only the beginning of our vindication. By the end of that week, the story of what my parents had done had spread throughout our extended family, our community, and even my parents' workplace. My father worked for a small accounting firm where reputation and trust were everything. When word got out that he had misappropriated family funds and then lied about it, 3 of his biggest clients requested new accountants. My mother lost her position as treasurer of the church women's auxiliary when the story reached their congregation. The irony of someone who had stolen from her own daughter being in charge of church finances was not lost on anyone. Madison and Kevin found a different house, a smaller one that they could afford with their own savings and a conventional loan. It took them an extra 6 months, but Madison told me it felt infinitely better to build their life on something they had earned together rather than something taken from someone else. Every time I walked through that first house, I would have thought about you, she told me. I would have remembered that my happiness came at the cost of your dreams. This house might be smaller, but it is really ours. Our wedding took place on a perfect October day at the Riverside Manor, exactly as I had always dreamed. But the day was made even more special by the family who chose to be there for us. Madison was my maid of honor, and her speech brought tears to everyone's eyes as she talked about the importance of chosen family and standing up for the people you love. Grandma Rose walked me down the aisle, her arm steady and strong as she delivered me to Marcus with a fierce smile of pride. Uncle Jim officiated the ceremony after getting ordained online specifically for our wedding. Aunt Sarah and her family flew in from across the country to celebrate with us. The church was full of relatives who had rallied around us during the darkest time of our lives. My parents were not there. They had not been uninvited. Marcus and I had actually decided to extend an invitation as a gesture of forgiveness. But they had chosen not to come, sending a terse RSVP that simply said unable to attend. Their absence should have made me sad, but instead it felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally, who celebrated my happiness without reservation, who had proven that they would fight for me when it mattered. During our reception, Marcus surprised me with a presentation that made me cry happy tears. He had compiled every recording, every document, every piece of evidence from our ordeal into a bound book that he titled The Case for Sophia Chin, a study in justice and family loyalty. Most lawyers keep their case files confidential, he said during his speech. But this case was too important to lock away in a filing cabinet. This case was about proving that the woman I love deserves to be loved properly, and I wanted everyone to see the evidence of how extraordinary she really is. The book included not just the documentation of our legal battle, but also testimonials from family members about my character, copies of cards and letters I had written over the years, photos of all the times I had been there for other people during their difficult moments. It was a reminder that family is not just about blood relations, it is about the people who choose to show up for you when everything falls apart. 6 months after our wedding, Madison called to tell me that our parents had reached out to her, asking if she thought there was any chance for reconciliation. They had apparently spent the months since our wedding in therapy, working with a counselor who specialized in family dysfunction and narcissistic behavior patterns. What did you tell them? I asked. I told them that reconciliation is not something they get to decide they want when the consequences of their actions start feeling uncomfortable. I told them that if they want any relationship with either of their daughters, they need to start by taking full responsibility for their behavior without expecting forgiveness in return. And? Dad hung up. Mom asked if I thought you would ever be willing to listen to an apology. I thought about that for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe that people could change, that my parents could genuinely understand the harm they had caused and work to repair it. But a larger part of me recognized that some betrayals are too fundamental to overcome. Maybe someday, I told Madison. But not today and not anytime soon. I need to focus on building my life with Marcus and maintaining the relationships with people who have proven they deserve my trust. Today, 3 years later, Marcus and I are expecting our first child. Madison and Kevin bought the house next door to ours, and our children will grow up as close as siblings. Grandma Rose, now 81, has already started knitting baby blankets and planning elaborate birthday parties for her future great-grandchild. We have created the family we always should have had, one built on mutual respect, genuine love, and unwavering loyalty. Our children will never have to wonder which parent loves them more, or compete with their siblings for affection, or worry that their trust fund might disappear if someone else needs it more. Sometimes justice is not about punishment or revenge. Sometimes justice is about walking away from toxicity and choosing to build something better. Sometimes the greatest victory is not in defeating your enemies, but in creating a life so beautiful that their absence becomes a blessing rather than a loss. The wedding fund that my parents tried to steal became the foundation for something much more valuable than a single day of celebration. It became the catalyst for building the kind of family that every child deserves, one where love is unconditional, where trust is sacred, and where everyone shows up when it matters most. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Have you experienced that moment when you realized that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones causing the most harm? I want to hear about your experiences with family karma and justice in the comments below. Did standing up for yourself ultimately lead to a better life, even if it cost you some relationships along the way? Your stories of courage and chosen family give other people hope that they can survive their own family betrayals. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama about love, betrayal, and the sweet satisfaction of justice served. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you were born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your happiness instead of stealing your dreams. Life has taught me that the best families are built on choice, not blood, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who do not deserve your loyalty.